Hi there, TaffyRue here, and welcome to another exciting episode of Features by TaffyRue, where we get to put the spotlight on young, upcoming artists and creatives who are bubbling under. So, up until now, on the podcast, I've had a history with the people who have come through on the podcast, and we've had amazing conversations. But today is going to be slightly different because with my next guest, I am actually getting to discover and learn about her together with you. So I'm super, super excited to have her on the podcast, and I'm super excited to be getting to know her with you guys. And her name is Mhinduro. Mhinduro, welcome.
Thank you, TaffyRue. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So like I mentioned, this is my first time venturing on this podcast with someone who I don't know. So maybe we can start with a brief introduction about who you are and what you do.
Okay. My name is Mhinduro, and I'm an upcoming musician, gospel musician.
Okay.
And I would just say I'm a girl who's loved by God, who's seen God's hand move, who's really understood what it's like to be loved when at your best, at your worst. That's basically me.
Okay. Beautiful name, by the way.
Thank
Unique.
you.
This is my first time hearing that name. So it's a really beautiful name. And I think I've seen somewhere where you have translated that name, and that's what you go by in your music world, right? So
Yes.
what is your stage name or your... at Zamora, the music people, they call it pseudonym or something like that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. What is your AKA, your stage name?
So my stage name is Answered Prayers in brackets Mhinduro
Okay.
Music.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. What has... So why music? Yes. Why did you get into music? Did you always see yourself as a musician? Did you start singing at a young age? Why music?
So I grew up in the church.
Okay.
My parents are Christians, so I used to go to church every Sunday. So with that would come singing, but also I just used to find myself somehow, without even thinking about it, in choirs,
Okay.
or in choirs in primary school, in choirs in high school, in choirs in uni, actually. So it was just something that I was in, but never really thought about until at one point I met someone who actually trained me vocally, and I heard a sound that was coming out of my mouth, which I thought, I can actually do that.
Wow. Okay.
So since then, I think it was just, there was a time that I knew at some point I'm going to go into music and Christian music, but I really wanted to do it the proper way. So my idea of venturing into music was going into music school, really understanding music. That hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened for a lot
that
of us.
hasn't happened. But that's the ideal.
Okay.
And but I now just started feeling very strongly just to start. So that's how my music journey started, and that's how I am where I am today.
Okay. So why do you say you would want to do music? So you've talked about how you got into it, right? So you were young and you would find yourself in choirs, singing and things like that, right? But why would you say you want to do music now, particularly?
I think it's a calling, because it's very strong in me. Like the Bible, like Jeremiah, you know how he said, "I don't even want to speak, but there's a fire within me that I have to do this." So I sort of feel like that, and even with now just jumping into it without the training, I just really felt a push and I just couldn't stop. I just
Yeah.
could not do anything.
Okay.
I had to start stepping one step at a time with the journey.
Okay. So, what kind of music would you say you want to do?
So I'm, like I said, I'm starting since 2020. So that's like 5 years ago. So
Yes.
2020 was when I had the idea of actually doing something about
Okay.
it. And my first recording was 2021.
Okay.
So at now I think I'm beginning to have a feel of where I want my music to go to.
Okay.
But at that point I didn't know. It was okay, I'm just going to go with the flow. So my music is very different. If there are 9 songs at the moment,
Okay.
they're all very different songs,
Okay.
different producers.
So, what genres did you dabble in? Was it like strictly like the gospel music sound, or did you try with different, like, jazz, or all the other types of music?
Yeah, there is a jazz. There's one that's jazzy.
Okay.
But the other ones, I would say more contemporary,
Okay.
I think. The first ones, I think, had maybe a South African gospel music vibe.
Okay.
But that's also because of the producer I was working with. I think he was inclined that way.
Okay.
But in terms of my articulating what I actually like in terms of my music, I don't think I found that yet.
Okay. When people listen to your music, the ones that have been privileged to listen to it, who do they say you sound like?
They haven't really told me who I sound. Okay, that's a good question, actually. The response that I get normally is the music has depth.
Okay.
So the words are meaningful, which is actually something that I got from people like Anamai Suluma, Minister Mhinduro. There was a time in my life that I was actually, a very low point, and those kind of songs which had the word, which had something that I could hold on to, are the ones that helped me.
Okay.
So I think I might mirror a bit of that
Okay.
in terms of having the word and having encouragement as well.
Okay.
But in terms of a genre, I'm not sure.
You're not sure yet. What do you
We
like
still-
listening to?
I listen to anything,
Okay.
anything and everything. Like I said, Minister Mayendere. Yeah, anything that has the word and that I can hold on to, I'll
Okay.
listen to.
So it doesn't matter what genre it is, as long as it is biblically sound and it has that message that can help you or uplift you in some way.
Yes.
All right.
And also seasons change. So in one season, I'm more keen to other songs. And then in another season, I might have a season that I'm listening to one artist more than in another season.
Yeah, definitely. Because I guess music has a way of appealing to different, seasons in our lives. And one artist might be, moving in that direction that you're kind of feeling. I've seen it in my journey as well in terms of listening to music. I can listen to one song like for a week.
Yeah.
And then when that week is done,
It's done.
it's done, and then I'm
Yeah.
moving on to a different season. So yeah, I can completely relate with that. So in terms of your musical journey, so you've mentioned you've worked with different producers, right? Have you worked with 9 different producers, or you've worked with one producer more than the other?
I think I've worked with so the first 3 songs was one producer.
Okay.
And then one song, one producer, 2 songs, one producer, and I think so maybe I've worked with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you, so in my journey, as a musician. Like finding the right producer is always one of the hardest things,
Yep.
especially when it comes to when you have a particular sound that you want to achieve in your head, and then you go to a particular producer, but the song doesn't turn out the way you envisioned it.
Yes.
I don't know, have you experienced the same thing in terms of working with different producers? Have you found it easy to work with different producers? Have they managed to bring your vision to life, or was it one of those things that you struggled with as well?
So I would say the music industry is very it's unique. And it's very, although I'm doing Christian music, I find that there's a lot of borrowing from the secular. So
Okay.
that for me already is a bit of a challenge.
Okay.
So what I did was I realized that different people have different giftings, and we might not have the best rapport, but I have to be humble to learn what I have to learn from you. I acknowledge your gifting. We might not be the best friends, but let's get what we need to do done.
Yeah. Okay.
So that way I find that I am learning a lot.
Okay.
Initially, it was really difficult. Like even articulating, you mentioned having something in your head, articulating it to the producer,
Yeah.
you know. But now that I've worked with a lot of producers, I've picked different things.
Okay.
And gracefully, they're able, I give them the concept and they're able to come up with things that I feel are great, or the vision I had, or even sometimes better.
Okay.
But it wasn't like that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, also because I didn't have a lot of experience, I didn't know where to push,
Yeah.
where not to push.
Yeah.
But now I think I'm more confident. And also being a female in this industry, there are not a lot of female producers.
Yes.
I actually don't know a female producer who does gospel.
Okay. You know one who doesn't?
At all. Like who at least does it.
I mean, who does produce? It'll be
Yeah,
interesting, right?
yeah.
I mean, yeah, like you're saying, it's very hard to find. I've noticed it as well in terms
Yeah.
of coming across a lot of females in the industry. It's quite hard. Yeah.
So no, actually. So like that, it's already, there's some times when you just connect with a female person and they
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
So I've learned to be assertive as well. If there's something that I think I want, regardless of whether 100 people think it works or not, if that's what I think it's supposed to happen,
Yeah.
I've found a way to be assertive in that regard.
Yeah.
Which can be a challenge as well,
Yeah.
because like I said, with the industry, we borrow from the circular, and sometimes in the circular production, the producer knows it all. They do everything. You can't really contribute. But I think it's just having that confidence and conviction to say, this is what I think needs to go with
Yeah.
my brand. Can we get that done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you worked with Christian producers or just any?
Most of them are Christian producers, or who do mostly Christian producers.
Okay.
My preference would be to go with a complete Christian producer, because I'm a big I feel that, not I feel, because this doesn't go with feelings,
Yeah.
but I'm a strong believer that whatever you do with the music, especially if it's Christian or gospel, there is an aura to it, and whoever you work with sort of brings their aura with
Yeah,
them.
okay.
So my preference would be to go with Christian producers, but sometimes you find that you limit yourself that way.
Yeah.
So I try as much as I can to work with Christian producers, but sometimes they do both Christian
Yeah.
and secular
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. One thing that I enjoy when I work with a producer who is a Christian is just divine protection on the project. Like I've worked with people who do mainly circular music, and you'll find that there's just always an attack.
Yeah.
And so when somebody else is not, prayed up and knowing, knowing God for themselves, you'll find that they're usually probably like a weak link that the devil can use to derail the project. So,
Okay.
like you'll find computers crash and files go missing and you can't. So you'll find that if you haven't really prayed over that project and both of you are in the same line when it comes to praying over what you're doing, there's always a week somewhere where the devil can just use to. And when you're doing ministry, the devil doesn't want you to succeed in that. So you really need to be prayed up and really strengthening your relationship with God and because you need the strength to fight against those things from coming up. So working with Christian producers, I've really found that it's a little bit more less stressful because you know that you are on the same level in terms of praying for what you're doing and really protecting that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
My comment on that would be, for me, what I have realized when working was, I walked in saying, oh, I'm working with Christian producers.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be perfect. And then there was the whole, I think there was a naivety to it. We're still all people at the end of the day.
Yes.
So for me, it was the shock when things would happen, or when you would say you're going to deliver this on this day and you haven't delivered it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you're a Christian.
Yes.
Your word should bind you,
Yes.
or you do weird things that I'm not understanding, and I'm like, but you are a Christian.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, I had to come back and say, look, I'm a Christian as well.
Yes.
I'm not perfect. So in as much as I am working with Christian producers, there are things that can happen.
Yeah.
So just being open-minded about that and extending grace.
Exactly.
Because normally that's a bit difficult to do. It's usually, you didn't do this. But then when you also reflect on your own personality, you're thinking, oh, okay, I do need grace. So I should extend some grace as well.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, like you mentioned, just because you're working with a Christian producer doesn't mean you're also at the same level. But like you're saying, in terms of we're all humans and we do make those mistakes, we then also get to practice, what the Bible teaches in terms of forgiveness and extending grace to the other person and all of that. Definitely. Okay, so what has your music journey look like? Would you say that you are well on your way? Where do you want to go with your music? And what has it looked like from the time you started? So, like when did you say, so I think you mentioned 2020, right? So when you started recording. So what has it looked like so far from 2020, and what will it look like, or what do you want it to look like in the future?
So what's been happening is a lot of work behind the scenes. A lot of work has been happening. Like I said, I've got 9 songs. Most of those songs are not out at the moment. A little bit of, I'll be honest, I don't know what happens with a lot of creatives. I have spoken to a lot of creatives who are really good, but just don't really have the confidence to know that how good they are. So I think for me as well, it's that I don't know how will it be received, and also just life being busy. So there's a lot of work that has happened behind the scenes. 2025, I'm hoping and praying that it will be a year of releasing and people getting to know me, seeing how things are received, and then sort of mapping a way forward. In the next 5 years, I would like to know music more. So by then I would have wanted to do a bit of education, more education on music, understanding music. I don't play an instrument at the moment, maybe playing an instrument, just basic,
Yeah.
so that even when you want something produced, you understand what's happening. You can
Yeah.
articulate musically
Yeah.
what you want.
Exactly.
So that's where I see myself in the next 5 years, and just keep on doing. Like I said, I feel it's a calling for me, but it's following what God says I should do.
Yeah.
So, and I think that does not look like just sitting and not doing anything.
Yeah.
So doing projects that God leads me to be doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think your music is going to help? Like, I mean, the world faces a lot of issues. Young people
Yep.
are facing a lot of issues. And a lot of them are not going to get the chance to do therapy or anything like that, but they're going to have the opportunity to go on YouTube, search up a song, or, listen to music. What part do you think your music can play in solving some of the issues that we have today, or probably helping out the people who are facing these issues today?
Sure. I think I'll answer your question with a bit of a story and a background of myself. So, like I said initially, I grew up in the church. I grew up in the church. I would go to church every Sunday. That's just what I knew since I was a baby. But I always used to say to God, so I think primary school was okay. High school initially okay, and then you start having questions. And I always used to see like the people around me just living life the way they wanted to live life. No, not under any cover, not under any restriction. And I would say, God, I feel like you've put a leash. There's a leash on my neck. Why can't I do what I want to do? Every time I want to step out, there's a piece that leaves me. And I don't want that. But then came a time where I did step out, and I just basically lived a life that was not pleasing to God at all. And the thing with the devil is, I feel when he lures you into something, it looks so attractive, but he doesn't tell you about the consequences. Like, look at Hollywood. All we see is the boy meets girl, they are married, they live happily ever after. You are heartbroken, you spend you drink a lot of, no one is going to talk about how you are going to get depressed, or how that drinking, it can start as one night and it's going to end up in, something that you can't reverse, So I got to a point after the living life, having fun, it just got to a point where it became so meaningless to me. And I can say I hit a bit of, I hit a low at that point. And no one really had the answers for me. Family could try, but no one really got to me at that point. And what I did was I just took my Bible and I started reading it like a book, because I was so desperate. I was so desperate, and I knew that there was peace in the Bible. Sometimes I couldn't even understand what I was reading, but at the end, there would be peace. So at the end of an evening, I'll take the Bible, I'll read it, there would be peace. It might not have spoken to the exact situation I was going through, but there was peace. So because of that, I think that's the first time in my life, and I was an adult then, where I actually read the Bible from not cover to cover, because it was first the Old Testament and then the New Testament. But at that point, I read the whole Old Testament, and it was like light. It started bringing me out of that low point. And around about that time as well, I was listening to a lot of Minister Mhinduro, a lot. And some of the things that he was saying, the positivity, the positive words that were coming from his songs, I didn't believe them in me at that point. So when he would say things are going to be okay, in my head, I would be thinking, how? How are things going to be okay? But the fact that someone else believed that things are going to be okay, I then held on to that.
Yeah.
And eventually I came out. So your question, the answer to your question, I would like my music to be hope for people.
Yeah.
So I've got one song that says Andi Vunduke. It talks about standing on the word of God. No matter what happens, we stand on the word of God and it will pull us through. So I would hope that when someone listens to a song like that, they have the hope, they have the strength to hold on. And there are times, there are things like you mentioned in our society, the younger generation, they are going through a lot,
Yes.
a lot. They are drugs, there is social media, there's just so much pressure. And then there are times that they can't exactly talk or articulate how they're feeling.
Yeah.
But God sees.
Yeah.
So I would want them to know. And sometimes it's a matter of them being in their bedroom on their own and listening to a song and getting hope.
Yeah.
That's where I would want my music to be used, and just bringing hope in this world which is so dark at this point. Sort of a piercing message and a piercing hope, and leading people to Christ. Because I'm a Christian. I believe that life is God and Jesus Christ. If you don't have Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
life is tough.
Yeah.
I've done life without Jesus Christ, and I was like, I don't want to do this
Yes.
ever again. The leash that I used to talk about, that's okay. Because what I realized is it's not really a leash. It's just God protecting you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think a lot of people, especially people who have grown up in the church, right? And we grow up in Christian families as well. You know, we're told, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, this is what the Bible says, right? And we get to start feeling like you're mentioning, a leash, like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And yet, when you have that relationship with God, it's more of it being God is protecting me from He knows just how bad it is for me to do that thing. That's why He has put this, and obviously when we're still growing up, we don't understand. But if we then pursue that relationship with God, and the more we grow in our faith, the more we then begin to understand that, okay, this is not a restriction, it's actually protection. And I think a lot of us need to learn that lesson,
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes you have to go through it, because if someone had told me then, I'd have just said they're trying to cramp my style. And probably, there's some teenagers, some young people who are listening to me, and they're saying they want to experience it on their own. But I would say, like, I look at people who I grew up with, or people who are in my youth group, who have been consistent in their journey with God and where they are now. Sometimes I say, I should have just stuck it through and I would be at another level, but it's okay, because God is a God of new beginnings.
Yeah.
God's timing is in His hands. So yes, we messed it up at the, but He uses all of your.
He does.
Yeah. So maybe if I hadn't gone through what I'd gone through, I wouldn't be empathetic as empathetic as I am now, or even I wouldn't even be able to tell my story with such conviction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think when you hear people's testimonies, I think it's amazing to know that somebody else has been through what you've been through, that you're not the only one thinking of, for example, God's rules as leashes, for example, or God's commandments as leashes. But knowing that, someone like Mhinduro went through this, and then she discovered at the end that no, this was actually protection. This is
Yeah.
actually protection for me. So I'm not alone. But also I'm able to then have that relationship with God, even if I have messed up a couple of times.
Yes. I think the mistake we make as Christians, well, the mistake that I made was because my journey was I grew up in the church, I was the good kid.
Yeah.
When I stepped out, it was so hard for me to talk to God. So that just made me go further and further away from God. What I do now is whenever anything happens that is even that I know is displeasing to God, I run back to God. Because what I realized is I think that's where the devil wants you to be, away from God.
Exactly.
I couldn't pray, I couldn't face God, I couldn't even ask God for comfort. But now that I know what I know now, God is loving. I've just seen his love at my worst, at my best. He's consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that the enemy wants us to think that when we mess up, we can't take it to God. And then it's his way of driving that wedge between us and God. And yet God is saying, come to me. I'm here for you,
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a beautiful testimony. And I know that it's going to impact a lot of young people.
I hope so.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So now we've come to the time in the podcast where we get to switch roles. I don't know if you have any questions that you would want to ask me. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, like I said before, we females in the industry, it
Yes.
would be very interesting to know what your journey has been like. So what would you say has been a highlight in your journey, and what has been a teachable moment? What have you learned, and what would you tell people or give as advice as well to people through your teachable moment?
Those are two powerful questions. Okay, so the first one is a highlight in my life, in my journey as a musician. Wow. I think a highlight would be, it's obviously not probably what people were expecting, but I did a talent show it was called Zimbabwe Has Talent back then. It's now called Dreamstar. And so it was 2014, and I was trying to probably break out of my shell, and I hadn't, performed in front of people or been in front of judges who would tell you, that you should stay away from this, or who would judge you and what you're doing. So then the last one that I did in 2014 was the one Zimbabwe's Talent, aka Dreamstar, and I made a decision from my experiences of the other talent shows to sing my own stuff, and my own stuff was Christian music. So I did this talent show, singing my own stuff, and I got to the finals for this particular show. And for me, that was a highlight, because I was like, it was almost like sort of validation in terms of you're on the right path, creating music like this, and people want to sort of hear it. And then I got to the like so on the final night, we were competing against each other. So they split us into two, where we would like battle each other, and then they would pick the person who would go to the next stage. And then so my teachable moment comes from there. I changed my strategy and I sang somebody else's song. It was so Christian, but I changed my strategy, and then I didn't go to the next round. And for me, what that showed me, I guess, was to be confident enough in what God had placed in me, and share the gift that God had given me in the writing, in the songs that I had written, and the music that I had produced. I guess I wanted to do something that people were familiar with, and all of those things, but it ended up not working. So I guess that was both a highlight and a teachable moment for me. Doing that talent show.
Great, interesting.
Yeah.
I like what you said about the teachable moment,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the times God has placed something in our hearts, but we are not sure, or it might not be something that a lot of people appreciate, but that's what God has placed in your heart.
Yeah.
So I think for me as well, I'm learning with that, because there are things that God has placed in my heart, but some of them might be the reason that I haven't uploaded things is I'm like, what if it's got 2 views?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
if God has placed something in your heart for those 2 views, then you have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
So that's I like your teachable moment.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do it.
What God has placed in your heart.
Exactly. And another person I had on the previous season of TaffyRue, and she was a social media person, and she was talking about how just upload that content. Yes, it's got 2 views. Yes, it's got 1 view. That's the person who was supposed to get that message, and that
Yes.
is okay. Once you have done that, you've achieved your purpose. You are successful in that when you've spoken to that one person who was supposed to see that message. So yeah, from then on, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna upload whatever God tells me I'm going to do.
I'm doing it.
Whether or not I get validation from people,
Yeah.
God is the one who will determine whether I have succeeded in what He has called me to do or not.
Yeah. The validation is, I think you just have to be confident
Yeah.
in God.
Exactly.
Because the validation part, and then sometimes you find you're going in a route that no one has spoken to you about, and then you have to redirect. I mean,
Yeah.
we are all human beings, but we also have to be true to God.
Yeah.
And validation is a big one,
Yeah.
especially in this industry.
Yes, we
Yeah.
definitely want people to be like, "Oh, you're doing good. You're
Yeah.
doing good," but sometimes it might never come. But being confident in God and what He has placed in you,
Yeah.
all that matters. That's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if you have any words of encouragement or to young people who are coming up who probably want to do music, who want to do whatever it is in their life. Maybe we can close off with you giving them a word of encouragement. And you can look into that camera and
Sure.
speak to somebody.
Okay. All right. So my encouragement will just be in terms of confidence in the gifting that you have. There are 2 things I think that I'll talk about. So the confidence, if God has spoken to you, just what we have been talking about, do it, regardless of what people said. I've been told I don't have a strong voice. I've been told so many things. I've been told I have too many lyrics in my songs. But some of those songs with the too many lyrics have had really good feedback. So whatever you have spoken to God about in your prayer closet, have confidence in that. Base your confidence on God and go with it. If God tells you to do something, do it. Even if it's for one person, do it. Because at the end of the day, we're going to be held accountable for what we did on this earth. So let us obey God and do it, whether it's comfortable or not comfortable. And then the second thing is, in this industry, it's a very unique industry. You deal with people with different personalities. You deal with people that is sometimes it's really difficult to build rapport with, people that don't go along with your personalities. But be humble and learn, and be willing to learn what you have to learn. And if you learn, if you're humble, if you overlook all the drama, all the different personalities, you will become a better musician, and you will add on to what you know. Knowledge is power. The more you know, the better person, the better musician you will be, and also the better you will be able to articulate yourself in this music industry. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
for
me,
having
Mhinduro.
me. It's been such a pleasure being here.
Awesome, awesome. We look forward to hearing your music, more and more music out there.
Yeah, that is the goal.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining me on this conversation with Mhinduro. I hope you enjoyed learning about her as much as I did and you heard it for yourself. Be obedient to what God is telling you to do. Be humble, right? While you are doing what you're doing, learn as much as you can and you will become a better version of yourself, able to fulfill the purpose that God created you. And with that, until next time, bye.